Hello, welcome everyone to today's Dimensions user group meeting. This is a day that we've put together that follows on to the overall Digital Science Publisher Day, which was yesterday. Today we'll be very focused on Dimensions. Yesterday we sort of crossed over a variety of different digital science portfolio companies, and it's a little higher level. Today we'll sort of get to a little bit deeper level on Dimensions specifically, and also the attendees today for today's session will be mostly folks that have either used Dimensions, use it on a daily basis, or have sort of intimate knowledge of it through either trial access or have used it in the past. So all experienced users here today, and of course a little bit more of a deeper dive into Dimensions specifically rather than sort of cross digital science portfolios. So my name is Tyler Roos. I'm the Director of Publisher Solutions at Digital Science. I'll be the host for today. And I will be walking through a variety of different presentations. We do have a pretty good agenda today. There's a lot of things happening here over the next 3 hours. We'll start with some opening remarks from Betsy Donohue, who's the Managing Director of Publisher Relations at Digital Science. So she'll kick us off today. And then we've basically broken down the agenda into 3 sessions. The first, we'll be talking about the Dimensions data platform, and essentially that's the variety of different ways that publishers use the Dimensions data outside of sort of a productized version of it that we have created here at Digital Science. To speak to that, we've got Manisha, who'll be talking from the Dimensions team, followed by Ian, who'll be talking from Frontiers. The second session will be focused on the Dimensions API, and we'll be hearing from Christian Boda on the Dimensions team, and then Toby from Hindawi will be talking a little bit about how they use the Dimensions API in their different workflows and systems. And then the last session will be focused on Dimensions Analytics. That's really the sort of web application or the web-based product that most people are familiar with because it is the most accessible and the most used version of Dimensions across the audience. That will actually kick off with a contest from me. So really sort of a user-based contest to test some of your skills within Dimensions Analytics. And then Christian will be back again to talk about the Dimensions roadmap for analytics in terms of what's been currently or what's been recently developed and what's coming soon. And then Tiff Drake from Taylor & Francis will wrap up that with some of our customer stories around what they do with Dimension Analytics. And then we'll have a wrap up and Q&A session at the end of that. But that's the overall breakdown is sort of the 3 sessions focused on the different sort of iterations of the Dimensions offerings from Digital Science. We'll go through a little bit of housekeeping to start things out with. We do have a chat function in the Crowdcast application we're using today. So that's on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. You see something that says, say something nice. Feel free to jump in there. Let us know where you're from. Ask any questions you have. Introduce yourself. And you can use that as well to communicate with the host or other attendees during the session. So feel free to use that chat function as we go on throughout the day. If you do have any questions, so we'll have a Q&A session at the end of today's meeting, but please add those using the Ask a Question function at the bottom of your screen. It's sort of to the left of that Say Something Nice box. Go ahead and put a question in there. If you do see any questions that are already in there that are really interesting to you or relevant to you, you can upvote those questions so that we can prioritize and make sure we tackle any questions. If we don't get to everything at the end of the day in terms of reviewing questions, we'll definitely send follow-up. So we'll be tracking all of those questions throughout the day. If you do have technical issues with Crowdcast, just go ahead and add a note to the chat. If you still have connectivity, we'll take a look and see if we can't answer any questions you have about being able to turn on audio, being able to make sure that you're seeing the video, etc. But if the broadcast completely fails or is completely interrupted, just bear with us. We'll definitely send messages out either via email or through the chat, letting you know what's going on. There have been sometimes where internet connectivity stops and we lose speakers, etc. So, but just stay tuned if that does happen today. And I want you to be aware that Digital Science does have a code of conduct. We are committed to providing a safe online environment for all participants of this event and all of our virtual events. So note that our code of conduct is published at the URL provided here if you do want to take a look through that. And just be mindful of the overall code of conduct as it relates to having a virtual event. Okay, the last thing is that for the contest I've got today, again, that's in a couple of hours, so we've got some time. But for those that don't currently have access to Dimensions Analytics, let's say you're not a current subscriber, or you're from a customer that doesn't have an account set up already, we've created temporary access for everyone. But if you didn't get an email welcoming you to Dimensions for today's activities, please go ahead and send me an email at t.roos@digitalscience.com. I'll be happy to, throughout the course of the day, make sure that you've got access if you didn't get that. It's not 100% necessary, but during that contest, you do have a chance to win some great stuff. So if you do have access and you do want to participate, it's really great to have a full account to Dimensions Analytics set up for you. Okay, with that, we're going to kick things off by turning things over to Betsy Donohue, who again is the Managing Director of Publisher Relations at Digital Science. She's going to start the day with some opening remarks. Then she'll kick it back over to me, and I'll go ahead and introduce our speakers for that first session where we're talking about the Dimensions data platform. So with that, Betsy, we're over to you.
Great. I'm going to start by sharing my screen. Okay. So welcome everyone to the 2022 Dimensions User Day. We just want to set the stage for today and talk about what we're trying to achieve today and what our goals are. Like last year's virtual user day, you may have noticed, if anyone participated on yesterday's publisher day, that the numbers are much smaller. So we're about 60, 70 attendees today. We want to keep it small. We want to keep it interactive. We want to keep it fun. So everyone who is joining us today is either an existing Dimensions customer, they've trialed Dimensions in the past, or have had in-depth conversations with Tyler, myself, or other folks on the digital science publisher team. So everyone knows about Dimensions. So all questions are welcomed. We want this to be interactive. So please challenge us. We're looking forward to that. We also want to give this small group the inside scoop on the newest developments that we have planned. And we want to talk across the variety of different Dimensions products for publishers. And again, we want to make sure we're not the only voices you hear. So it's not just about us digital science folks talking. We've invited your peers to share their experiences with Dimensions as well. So we have Toby Pryor from Hindawi joining today, Tiffany Drake from Taylor and Francis, and Ian Pott from Frontiers. Pretty sure everybody knows who digital science is, but again, as part of setting the stage, just a couple of reminders of who we are and what we do. So digital science is a pioneering technology company. We are very much focused on selecting the next generation of tools for the research community and working in partnership with the community to bring those to fruition. We want to use those tools to tackle some of the biggest challenges that we see globally in research around the world. We also believe that research should be open, collaborative, and inclusive, and our work at Digital Science is aligned to support exactly that. Our vision. We have a vision for a trusted, frictionless, collaborative research ecosystem. And we firmly believe that that ecosystem should drive progress for all. And then let's talk a little bit just about our people. Digital science is a home to some of the most open-minded, brave, and curious folks I've ever worked with. We definitely believe in the power of teamwork. The publisher team at Digital Science is exactly that. We work as a team. We really feel that teamwork will help empower us to achieve the goals that I spoke earlier on this slide. So that is who we are and what we do. And a little bit about Dimensions, past, present, and future. So some of the folks on our call today have been with us for a while, and none of this is a surprise. But we have some people joining us who are newer to Dimensions and newer to digital science. In the past couple of years, there have been a lot of changes to the Dimensions services for publishers and the Dimensions database in particular. But our goals remain the same. With Dimensions, our aim is to create the world's largest data set of interlinked global research information, and also to make it available to end users in the most flexible ways possible, and to really enable our users the freedom to use it as you need to. And what that rolls up to be is we're at 6 million grants worth of data within Dimensions. That represents 2.3 trillion US dollars of grants from 637 funders worldwide. So that's a lot of data. Getting into what exactly has changed, that significant growth in all data types. So I gave you a couple stats about funders, but we also have a big jump in publication data, in patents document data. On the slide here, you'll see a couple image grabs from, I tried to make the old Dimensions grab gray and put a little color in the newest one. But you can see even just in the publications numbers jumping from 89 million to 127 million. We have an entire new source and data sets. Our patents numbers have jumped from 35 million to 145 million, and clinical trials are approaching doubling. So the data has been growing considerably within Dimensions. We also have dozens of new features that we'll touch on today, new filters, custom groups, alerting, that search export directly into the Altmetric Explorer, author profile pages. So lots of new features that we've been hearing some feedback on. We'd love to get more feedback on what's lighting up for you today. So let us know. And then some new subject classifications. The ICRP, cancer types, SDGs, which is the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, units of assessment, et cetera, et cetera. So we want to make sure as we're pulling this new data within Dimensions that we continue to refine our classification and add to our classification type to make that data useful in lots of different new ways. And again, we are trying to go far beyond the data. These are generally the current product areas for Dimensions for publishers. We, of course, have the web application, which we call Dimensions Analytics. We have the Dimensions API, which supports that extraction of data for use in the more complex visualizations, the more complex analytics. And then related to that API, we've developed our own query language specifically for Dimensions data. And then we've got Google BigQuery, which is, was the new kid on the block, so to speak. But the Dimensions on BigQuery, it's a data set that enables users to do those large-scale analysis. But not only from Dimensions, but to kind of pull in and mash together in combination with their own data or data from another source. And then, of course, the bulk data. These 4 different options do require some sort of level of technical abilities for our users. But what we've got coming up next, and it's just a little hint here because we'll be covering it today, are a 5th. And that is an option for really extensive visualizations, very quick insights, but with no technical abilities required. So this is the new kid on the block now, and we'll cover it today. I'm not going to go into much detail because I don't want to steal any thunder, so I'll stop there. So as our product is changing, as our product is growing, as the options for the products are growing and changing, the use cases for our publisher customers and our customer base itself is diversifying as well. What we've been hearing over the past year or so is transformative agreements, and that really important OA evaluation is consistently the newer place for Dimensions data to really make an impact and really make a change. So this definitely floats up to the list of what we've been hearing from our publisher customers. Also, Dimensions data is changing how publishers consider their pre-publication strategy as well. And this is an area that, again, we wouldn't have thought of, wouldn't have anticipated, but we're hearing back from our publisher customers that they're using Dimensions data in really cool ways, including annual conference submission evaluation, potential author identification, community identification. It's very interesting how we're hearing back from publishers, their use cases in this area. And then also, we have a growing list of smaller publishers subscribing to analytics through the Society Publishers Coalition. So what this means is it's not just the medium to large publishers that are using dimensions in their day-to-day activity. It's now really smaller publishers too that are using dimensions data and finding it critical to their strategic goals. So this link here, and we'll share the deck afterwards, but there's a live link in this gray box at the bottom. It's a blog post from last month. It's a digital science blog post, but it summarizes a new independent comparison of dimensions to our competition. And this has added further evidence that dimensions and our strategy to be inclusive really is critical for the analysis of OA content and has considerable advantages. So I'll park this here. We'll share this deck later, and you can check it out yourself. And I always have to add a couple slides in here about my favorite here. My favorite is the Dimensions badge. If you're not familiar with the Dimensions badge, we're happy to show you in more detail later, but it's a great opportunity here to remind that if you are a digital science indexing partner, you can implement these badges on your content right now. It's one line of code, goes on your individual journal article template, kind of like the altmetric badge. But what the Dimensions badge does is provides an interactive visualization to showcase dimensions data. And specifically, what makes the badge very unique, it doesn't just provide a list of citations. So it does things that a list of citations just can't do. It does have citation counts. They're listed out, but they're also mapped by year. And this is a pretty handy reference to be almost an infographic to the person coming and interrogating the Dimensions badge. It also provides context and additional metrics. So we've got not just the number of citations, we've got how many of them are recent, and a couple normalized additional metrics here, including the field citation ratio and the relative citation ratio. And this is really aiming to give that additional context and provide additional metrics. And then my favorite is this here, citing research category. So with one click, you can also see what the topical areas of the publications that are citing an article. So that additional context, again, is something that just a list of citations can't do. And this is an example of what we talk about, additional context, being able to see what does this number mean? Is it higher than what we might expect? Is it average? Is it below average in the same field, in the same age? It's really invaluable information as opposed to just a flat number. And some new examples. So we have a growing list of publishers that implement the badge. We've got American Physiological Society, MIT Press, De Gruyter. These are just a couple I grabbed last night, but these are popping up on a fairly regular basis. And if you haven't looked into them, definitely take a chance to check them out. And then a couple more points before I wrap up and hand back to Tyler. This is another one of those things that if you know digital science, it may kind of be a point where, oh yeah, I knew that, but it's worth pointing out. So the integrations that we have with dimensions across digital science portfolios are pretty important. Altmetric was there from the start. So when we launched dimensions, the data was integrated from the get-go. We brought in the data sets integration in 2018. And this is really for dimensions users to view any open data that's hosted on Figshare and is associated with a publication. But now our newest, and we'll probably talk a little bit about this more a little bit later, but we're working on a Repeta integration with dimensions as well. And the point for this slide really is to point out that continual development, the dimensions integration across digital science really is dimensions being more than the sum of its parts. And finally, I mentioned earlier in my first slide to ask lots of questions, to interrupt and engage. And that's really because we want to hear from you. And we're always looking from your feedback. The Dimensions Visions needs you. When we first launched Dimensions, we had a development partner program and got feedback from the community. We very much don't want to be just another ANI database. We want that fresh take on research information, be more inclusive, be more innovative, and we want to enable things that can't happen in other places. So that has to require, well, it does require the feedback from our users. So please keep it coming. And then we'll continue to plan more things like this. We'll be hosting an industry breakout session at SSP in Chicago coming up. Please join if you can for that. If you're coming to that event, we're going to try to make that as engaging and as conversational as possible. We'll be sending a survey out after this user day. I know that can be a little bit of a time suck, but please give us your feedback because it's very helpful for us. And we've been doing some new engagement and outreach content. We did a series of FYI emails to provide kind of bite-sized updates on what's going on with Dimensions. We have the existing Dimensions email newsletter. And now we're also hosting group webinars for Tyler's new and notable updates and Q&A sessions. So we'll continue to do these things and take a steer from our customers about what's working for you. And if you have any more ideas, please let us know. That's it for me. So back over to you, Tyler.
Excellent. Thanks, Betsy. That was really great. A little bit of sneak preview there, which is really cool. And hopefully, again, as we go through today, you'll learn a lot about how lots of people are using Dimensions in different ways, but then also get some of that inside scoop of what's happening within the Dimensions sort of product suite as well. So to kick things off in this first session, which again focuses on the Dimensions data platform, and I use that as a sort of broad brush to cover all of the different ways that you can use Dimensions data outside of a sort of standard productized version of something that we've built here. We've got Manisha Balina, who will be speaking specifically from the Dimensions standpoint. Before we kick off a customer perspective, she's the product solution sales manager at Dimensions. So Manisha, over to you.
Thanks, Tyler. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here on the Publisher Day. So I've worked with publishers before as well, so it's nice to be back in this part of the world, because I am the product solution sales manager for Dimensions in EMEA, and I work quite specifically with universities. So today I'm going to put my hat on from my experience working with publishers, but also bring you a kind of perspective from the academic side as well. I'm going to show you a few different things. I'm going to show you a few searches that I've done in the Dimensions Analytics UI, and take you across how you can build quite an advanced or just look at something quite simple like a landscape analysis, and take that into a visualization using some of the very new technology. I mean, I haven't even demoed some of this stuff at all to my customers, so you guys are getting it fresh. My colleagues, such as Christian Boda, will probably go into more detail about this kind of thing, but I'm going to show you how it kind of works and how we can talk through some use cases on what we can do with data, and look at the visualizations and the power of making data-driven decision making across universities together with publishers. So I think that's an important thing to look at. And then I'll also look at not just the UI, but the dashboards we've created, and also looking at the API, and how looking at some of the simple cookbooks we've created can empower you to use something quite complicated to be actually quite simple, and how that would enable you to work closer with your universities making strategic data decision making. So I'm going to begin to share my screen. I've just got to look for the thing. Yeah, here we are. Okay, and I'm just going to start off with looking at a couple of slides. So I'm hoping that you can all see my slides, but I don't want to share anything. I want a slide. Okay, so you saw these slides from my colleague Ben McLeish, who gave you a bit of an update about new things in Dimensions. So we really want to, we're currently working in this area, right, where we have a web app, we have an API, and we're working with a lot of customers across, you know, funders, publishers, and academic institutions on Dimensions on Google BigQuery. But there are people, you know, that don't quite have the expertise in sitting in the organization to get hold of these visualizations, create dashboards on the fly of something that can be quite a sophisticated call within the web app, but creating a visualization that you would then want to share with your superiors, right? And showing you know, where things are going, where the market's going with certain publications over the years, or just pulling things in a better way to look at the data. So we're using that sort of power that we have in Dimensions on Google BigQuery and putting it into a place so that you could actually make extensive visualization insights without any technical abilities at all. So you don't have to necessarily know how to use an API or use an infrastructure as a service program to do this. So so those are the only slides I'm going to share with you, but I'm going to now move to the UI and show you some examples of how that can work. So I just wanted to start off with something quite simple and do a landscape analysis using open access data, right? So what I've done within the Dimensions UI, I have preloaded a search already, which is here you can see open access, and I've created a number of concepts, right, that I want to look at. So I use the co-occurring concepts advanced search that we have here within Dimensions, and you can see the grey ones that have faded out on the ones that I had already preloaded. But I could have made a quite sophisticated search, you know, and or not, you know, or anything else that I wanted to use within these parentheses and build up something quite sophisticated. So I did that here within Dimensions and preloaded it for you. And we can do the usual things from here where we can use the analytical views and go in and look at the data and you know, look at by fields of research. We can look at a heat map. But what I really wanted to show you today is the evolution of where we've come in Dimensions and really build out a dashboard and create a landscape analysis. So the way that you would normally do that is to use this save and export button, and you can see here, create a dashboard. But what I did in true UK Blue Peter style is, here's one I made earlier. So I've loaded it all here for you, and we've made a beautiful visualization ready for those with zero technical ability like myself. So you can go in, at the moment we're just looking at publication data, but you could go in and look at researchers, the patterns, the impact, the grant data, any collaborations, companies, and forecasts as well. But for the sake of today, I'm just going to look at the publication data. So we can see, you know, there are just under 70,000 publications, the countries, the organizations, and the amount of researchers that have been involved within this research topic concept that I have done. We've also looked at volume over the last few years. We can see, obviously, these are the years where we've had the most amount. So, you know, 2021 really being the height of publication output for the COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2, everything, that the concept search that I did. And then we can see that concept search then broken down by the fields of research, created in a visualization for you. So, you know, within the UI, it's great, but it's, you know, it's pretty much just broken down for you, which then you can export into a CSV. But having a visualization really enables you to then maybe copy and paste this and create your own presentations internally or externally as you need. You'll also see here predefined cumulative publications that we've got, and again broken down by fields of research in the last 5 years, so you can see the distribution across there for you. Then you can see the percentage change of publications by year. So that's using a sliding 5-year window, but we don't really have a 5-year window because this is COVID-19 searching that we're doing. But it really gives you, for example, the value of 50% in 2005. Okay, we'll look at that in the next example, and indicates that there were 50% more publications between this year than there were in the previous year. But it's a moot point for this because of how recent this research has been, right, in COVID-19. This is a really new thing that we've been working on. So the publication forecast. So the predicted line, as you can see here, we have the lower bound, the observed, the predicted, and the upper bound. So here we can look at the upper bound, and the predicted line will also give us some indicative data to a point of estimate of how many publications will be published in a topic in a given year, as forecasted by ARIMA model trained by historical trend of the topic. The upper and lower band lines indicate the range of possible values at about an 80% confidence. So we're already being able to forecast some publication data. Universities come to us and they say, we'd like to see and look into the future. And we're going to do a little bit of that in the API. But what I say is, you don't know where you're going if you don't know where you're from. And that really rings true for some publication data. And we can break that down further by concept as well when I show you the next example. So here we can do a comparison analysis of baseline as defined by the customer. So here in this one, we've done a publication volume. So we've looked at the baseline industry and the selected topic, and then we've done a growth rate, right? So this will show you publications by volume per year, and the blue bar indicates the number of publications each year in that selected topic. So the orange bars then indicate the same, but for publications as defined by my search that I had just created as well. And then you have the growth rate here as well. So lots of really powerful ways to indicate what we're, indicate and analyze the content that we've looked at. And now this is like by far, I think, my favorite part of the visualizations is really getting into and looking at them and analyzing them further and getting into the nitty-gritty of it. So here we have the keyword co-occurrence network colored by cluster. So, my background is very much like looking at concepts and looking at the connections between concepts. So this kind of thing really excites me. So we have a keyword co-occurrence colored by cluster, and then the co-occurrence network colored by relevance. So I populated these already because I wanted to show you. So here, for example, we're seeing this search that I did, remember, in the UI, and then it's created a dashboard, and then I've launched the co-occurring concept map out into this window pane, so that I can analyze it further. And we can click between these concepts here, for example, and we can see that between SARS-CoV and SARS-CoV-2 transmission, there are 421 shared publications between there. And then you can zoom in further and look at where those connections are. So while this map might look very overwhelming with information, actually you can drill right down into the nitty-gritty and get something more focused into what you're looking at, and thereby clicking between the strands, you'll be able to see in the number of shared publications between different concepts. The other thing that I like and gives you back a lot of power is the ability to set your preferences. So here, for example, it's showing me the scores of the concepts right there. And here we've already kind of done it here for you. But if you want to see those scores that are closer to 1.0, then you're able to change the map around to see just the ones that show the highest semantic connection, right? So the concepts which are the strongest, and then break that down further. So this is what we're all about: is democratizing the data so that you can really get into it yourself and make the analysis as strong or as wide as you wanted. So that was the keyword co-occurrence. And now we're looking at the relevance one, right? So now we're going to see where they overlap and build out the clusters a little bit more. So this is, again, the same search that I've done, but you'll be able to see more data between here. So here we've got between these two concepts, SARS-CoV-2 and vaccine, and you're also able to see the shared connections between them. So one was relevance and one was network. Again, we can really drill down into the data further and see where those clusters are and drill into them. So, I mean, the amount of information here that you would be able to get, even just from a visualization, will be able to show you, and analyze your research output. So I did that as a landscape analysis, and then as I pre-populate my going back into the Dimensions UI and pre-populate some of the dashboards I've done, they stay within my account in the UI. So I did one with a publisher as well. So here's one with Frontier with open access T cells and disease. So if we open that out, you can see I'm looking at Frontiers, but it wasn't the one with open access. I wanted to, yes, it was, sorry, one with open access, but I wanted to also make sure that I get rid of anything that is closed. And I really wanted to also find out, which areas Frontier is actually strongest in concepts at the moment. So when I went to advanced search, just by first pre-populating Frontier as a publisher, putting it into the search box, I went to advanced, I went to concepts, and I could see, okay, which are the co-occurring concepts, which are the strongest at the moment. And that's where I selected T cells and disease, because I wanted to, create a search which was the most relevant at the moment, but also get a bit of a landscape about, what's happening at Frontiers at the moment. So these are the kind of concepts that are coming out that we can see. And if I didn't know what they were, I can populate them here myself. And that's what I did. And again, I built out that dashboard so that I could see very specifically one publisher. So you could do this to analyze your work, perhaps with a university. You can also populate, you can add a university into the search criteria and build up, your relationship with them. But here again, I did the same thing. So I wanted to look at specifically Frontier, open access, T cells and disease. So I'm building up quite a more complex search, because I've added in two more layers of looking at a publisher and looking at a type of classification, open access or not, right? And again, it's done the same kind of thing, and it's built out a fantastic dashboard, without me having to write code at all, or get into Google BigQuery when I don't have the SQL ability to create that myself. So again, the same kind of thing where you're building up publication volume, fields of research by the selected year over the last 5 years, and looking at cumulative publications as well, broken down by fields of research. Percentage change of publications by year. So here we're seeing something quite different to what we did with COVID-19, because this this kind of research has been going on in the 90s and into the future as well. Again, we can have a publication forecast, so we're looking and predicting like where that's going by looking at the data that we're getting. So by 2026, we're looking at where these kind of publication forecasts are aligned with. Again, making a baseline defined by the customer. You can see this is very different now to the report that we looked at before about COVID-19. We have so much more data than we have, obviously, given the recency of the coronavirus pandemic coming through. But it's just going here to show you the amount of information that you'll be able to digest. There are 5 billion connections within Dimensions, using all the different data points we have. We have to make it work for you to make data-driven decision making. There's too many D's in there, and this is again one of the, because I love concepts, one of the things that I like to show the most is the keyword occurrence pairs, like we had before in the UI, but again a better visualization for you to be able to consume that kind of information here, and it's ready for you to share and use. And if we hover over some of that, you'll be able to see, for example, with that particular concept, how many publications have that keyword occurrence in there. Let's look at something else like T cells. again, how many publications are within that particular concept. So there's me taking you out into something brand new that we have just created. You know, I'm talking just like within the last few weeks as well, and taking you into the dashboards that we've created. Again, you can look at the, you know, the prevalence and set your own parameters on what you want to look at, and really, you know, create something quite specific around this. So, you know, please, if you want to have a deeper dive, you know, contact the team and they'll be able to take this, give you a deeper dive into these dashboards. But now I'm going to take you into the world of an API. For a person like me who has never actually used an API before joining Dimensions, it seemed like quite you know, something that you need to have about you know, a specific degree in to be able to do. But the great thing about Dimensions is they built these kind of like cookbooks which enable you to really use the API in a very simple way. And this time I wanted to not just look at publications, but actually look at the power of grants and look at how this could help a publisher work closer with the university, you know, especially with authors, and look at the funding and which areas of funding and concepts that they could be, you know, working in and researching to make better relationships with their customers. So here, what I have done is gone into our cookbooks and looked at identifying emerging topics in grants using concepts. So I built out the cookbook here by using the Service Collab in Google, and I'm able to set my own parameters straight away from doing this. And we've got some really great tutorials to help you use it. But I myself, by creating an API key within Dimensions, was able to do this very simply myself. And I created one, and here's one I created earlier, just reconnect here, for a university. Now, this university, Emory University in the US, wanted their biggest use case for using grant data, as I said, was to see into the future a little bit. And they really loved this visualization that we were able to create quite quickly from using the API and by just setting the parameters straight away. So here, by using, it's just connected to grid. So you're able to say, okay, for this grid ID, I want to look at the grants from this year to this year. So we've looked at a 10-year range, and I'm looking specifically here in pharmacology and pharmaceutical sciences as an example, right? Then you can build out and run the API by pressing the play button, and stage by stage, it will take you through different ways in which you can look at the concepts and how they're extracted. So right now we want to isolate interesting concepts. You can set the frequency of how many concepts per document, and you can indicate which score you're looking at. So if you're just looking at the ones that score highest to number one, then you can do that. Or if you want to look at the grey areas in which that university is potentially publishing and see if they match yours, then this is a great way of doing that. And then look at how many concepts you'd want to visualize straight away. So I've really built out this fantastic scatter diagram, which enables me to look at the concepts and look at the frequency of them. So here we're seeing, for example, this has got a lower score of nearly 5, and seeing how often they're coming up. This one again has got 3, and this one has got 7, but it's scoring the same kind of strength in semantic connection. But here are some of the ones where they have an extremely strong the strength of that concept is extremely strong. So this one is scoring quite high, 0.7, and therefore, you know, we might be looking at how often is this concept coming up, and what is the score, and is this a concept that maybe we're strong in and we could collaborate with and look at which authors we might want to attract to come and publish in our journals, you know, or can we work further together on any kind of transformative agreements using you know, open access data. You can build out beautiful what do you call them, these things, word cloud visualizations as well from this data that you're getting, and then also do a trend analysis on the emerging new topics each year. So right here I have done from 2010, show me 10 concepts from emerging concepts that are coming out from Emory. So I've selected the university, and here we're able to see and drill down exactly what that is. So if you want to look at this one, for example, neurological disorders, frequency is 3, and it's started in 2013, and it's we can look at how many times that then occurs across the years, and when was the first time it actually came up within their publication data as well. So this is just a very quick deep dive into looking at the API and the type of things that you can do, kind of looking into the future, looking at emerging concepts, how they fit with fields of research, and making data-driven decision making, and working closer with universities, to help them publish with you, create transformative agreements, and work with their authors aligned specifically in the areas and concepts that are coming out and that are trending, and that where people are investing into the future. So thanks a lot, and thanks for having me here, and have a great Publisher Day.
Thanks, Manisha. Really appreciate that. That was some really good insights across a variety of different things that we're doing with Dimensions. So that was fantastic.
No problem.
Really appreciate it. Yeah, thanks. Okay, so next up, we'll be getting into what we call a customer story. And essentially that is somebody who is an active user of Dimensions, presenting a bit about how they're using it, presenting potentially some use cases, some projects they've worked on, giving you some inside scoop on some of the things they've done. So if we could get Ian into the green room and ready to present, that would be fantastic. Excellent. Hey, Ian. So Ian Potter will be presenting next from Frontiers. He is the Director of Business Intelligence, and I know he's been working together with the team there on putting together some interesting slides today. Again, this session is really focused on the overall Dimensions data platform, so his perspective will be coming from essentially how to use all of the raw data in Dimensions to do some cool and interesting things. So Ian, with that, we're over to you.
Okay, give me 1 second. Hopefully you can all see my screen. So, as Tyler mentioned, I'm the Director of Business Intelligence at Frontiers. I've been with Frontiers now for around 7 months. And I actually came to Frontiers from one of the main competitors of Dimensions. So I'm seeing a whole new perspective here of using the Dimensions package and all the various tools. Frontiers, as you well know, is an open access publisher. We're very focused on using data. We bring in data from lots of different sources. We have our own data ocean. And one of the great things about Dimensions is that we have access to the data in various formats. So we both use the web app. Many of our publishing development teams use that. But we ingest the bulk data. We use the API. And more recently, we're using BigQuery. So I've been pleased to see today a lot of talk about visualization. So I'm going to talk about some of the visualizations that we use at Frontiers, which are powered using Dimensions data. So this is work that my colleague and senior analyst Matthew Richardson did. He's developing some standard techniques for visualizations, mostly using maps. So we kind of use the metaphor here of geographical maps. Really to build connections between things, to get away from big tables of data, to get away from charts, to really see how things connect together, and to make those visual, intuitive. So anybody in the business, even if they're not formal bibliometricians or analysts, can actually start to understand this data. And quickly see a lot of data in the same place as well. We all get deluged by data and suffer that kind of informational paralysis as we get more and more data in our day jobs. Every email that I open has more data in it. But we also want to make sure that we can reuse these visualizations throughout the business in a consistent way. So we're presenting the same information to different stakeholders, and they can agree then on courses of action. And we want to integrate new tools into this. So we have a fairly substantial data science team. So we're always pulling together new ways of doing analyses and trending and forecasting and clustering. So we want to build these tools as well into the way that we visualize these landscapes. So as you know, I'm not telling you anything new here, that BossViewer was integrated into Dimensions. It's a very useful tool for our publishing development teams, our editorial teams, and it's quick and easy to use. It does allow for some customization. There are some limits, though, just around using a web application, that there's only 25,000 publications. And as you know, these days, in many analyses, you have to deal with far bigger numbers. And the layout changes each time, so we don't have that level of consistency that we would like to have. And, it means that we can't just have a fixed layout for a map that we can easily compare. So what we do obviously then is start working with, for instance, the bulk data and our own instances of the visualization tool to really start pulling together those consistent maps. So these are the standardized maps. This is just one view of many that we use internally, but we do lots of things around journal scope and those communities that come together to form the publishing landscape. So those clusters, those various ways of looking at that, the authors that are working together, the journals which are publishing and co-publishing and citing each other. How publishers work together. We're very interested, obviously, in a competitive landscape, and who has a share in a particular field, where are authors going, those sorts of things. And increasingly, obviously, what funding is doing. So where funding is pushing publishing programs, research areas, those kinds of things. So what I'm going to show you now, this is a sample on screen at the moment. This is a network map of just major research nations and institutions over the last 5 years. And the distance between all these things is informed using co-authorship linkage. So these are authors collaborating together effectively. And you'll see there that we have these big clusters, one around the UK and Europe, one around China, one around the US. And that gives you quite an interesting geographical view there to show that there are these three kind of big clusters of people working together, but there's not a lot of collaboration between North America and Europe. Well, there is, but it's not standard. And then China as well is often its own effective continent there. So you start to see things straight away. You're seeing the top institutions and how close they are to each other is how many co-authorship links that they have. So you'll see the US and Korea. You can perhaps see it there. So you see the big institutions in the US, Stanford, Harvard. But you'll see a sort of Seoul National University in Korea. There are some connections starting to be formed. And it's quite nice to look at this as a time series. This is just a static snapshot. But if you imagine scrolling through time and animating this, you start to see research communities coming together. So that's an interesting angle that I don't have for you today, but something that we would like to think about. And we also produce these standardized maps. So this is just all the journals in dimensions, all linked together, all based on citation relationships for the last 5 years. And we've clustered them based on really broad subject areas here. So we can see, how many journals are in the life sciences, the physical sciences, and those are the domains. This is all based on dimensions data, but we turn this into a standardized map. So then we can start to put overlays onto this map. So we can use this to visualize all sorts of exciting things. These are just 2 samples, just to keep things nice and simple. So one thing we can look at is our own portfolio. We can also look at competitor portfolios, and we can get an instant view here of where their specializations lie. Are they a broad multidisciplinary publisher, or are they focused? So when we think about something like the American Chemical Society or something like that, they'll obviously be focused in the chemistry and the physical sciences. Bigger publishers like Elsevier will have a broad spread. Frontiers is fairly focused in the life sciences and biomedicine. So you start to see instantly, without any expertise about publishing, the kinds of areas that they're publishing in. We can also put other dimensions on this too. So we can start to think about, where are new journals being launched? Where are journals transforming into open access business models? We can start to overlay those things. And we start to think about funding as well, growth rates. Anything that we want to visualize, we can overlay onto this map, and we can generate it by publisher, by subject area, whichever way we want to do things. And it gives us nice standardized views that we can present, we can overlay, we can switch between them to give a nice view for stakeholders about how things are changing, what the difference is between those different dimensions. Without getting into data, without getting into graphs, it's a nice PowerPoint slide because everybody loves a good PowerPoint presentation. So it's a really good way that we're using a lot to visualize dimensions data. And we don't stop there too. We have lots of views around this initial map that I showed you. So again, we have those 3 big continents there. So Europe basically at the bottom there, the US, North America at the top, and then China and Asia there to the let's use geographical terms there to the west, the east effectively. This one here is just looking at who's contributing the top 10% of most cited publications. So you'll see the institutions, the size is the output, and then we have the color coding. So The colder colours, the blue, are ones which are contributing less of that top 10%. And the warmer colours, the yellows there, are contributing more. So you'll see some things which are quite obvious there. I mean, Harvard and Stanford, University of Oxford are very strong in that top 10%. But then you see the relative differences between the countries. You'll see that Europe are very strong contenders. US is a bit mixed, actually. I mean, overall, it's towards the bottom of that 10%, but some of its institutions obviously are extremely strong. And we see a similar picture in China, some very strong institutions, but then some weaker institutions. But we can vary that 10%. So, we can basically put a slider on this. So top 50%, top 1%, if we choose to, if we just identify the most influential institutions in the world and their papers and what their contribution is. So that's a nice view, tells us something quite interesting without, again, getting into the data. Another interesting pivot, and this one's obviously very interesting for Frontiers as an open access publisher. We want to know, what the engagement is with open access. So how much open access are they publishing? And we're talking about gold open access here. So we take the same map, and one thing that should be immediately apparent here using the same color scales. So warm is more open access, cold and blue is less open access. It's a very European phenomenon at the moment. That's not to say there aren't open access publishing happening in those other two big continents of publishing there, but it just shows that the emphasis has been in Europe to move towards publishing in open access, obviously driven by both government and funder mandates. But you can see how much is being taken up, just spotting some countries there. So Norway, Sweden, Poland, very strong. The Netherlands, very strong. And then we start to see those institutions, and there you can see some institutions have really taken to publishing open access. Often through the many transformational agreements, you can start to interpret this on the basis of external data, what's led to these changes. Well, then we travel a bit north on this map to the US, and you see it's all the colder colors there. There's one small institution that I see there, which might be the University of Texas Southwest. But generally, they aren't really pushing for open access. And again, that reflects some of the funder mandates, and just that the US has been somewhat later to the open access show. And again, we see a similar picture with China, where there is certainly a lot of open access publishing in international journals, but not a strong push again. So you just get a nice visualization. And we can change this around. We can look at different variables around open access. We can look at growth in open access across each of these domains. But again, we have that consistency of a map and viewpoints. So, we can have several different maps showing different dimensions here, and they're easy for any user to compare. Again, without, understanding fully the data, without showing individual values. It's a good intuitive view for anybody in Frontiers business, but also when we present them externally, it's a nice way to see these things. And one final pivot here, I'm trying to get you back on time as much as possible. This is just a field-based view. So we've randomly picked psychology, and this is good to see what the global contribution is to any particular field of research. And because we're using the dimensions data, we can pick any of those FORs and use that then just to interpret the map. And we can build these maps where you can just select any field effectively, or combination of fields, to just see how things lay out across this particular geographical map. And we can see here the strengths. So again, the warmer colors towards the yellow are where there is more output in this particular research field, psychology, and the colder colors, blue, is where there is less output. And the size of the bubbles is just total overall output. And again, the relationship is all built, all these maps are built around this co-authorship relationship. So closeness just shows interacting authors between these institutions and countries. And it gives you a nice view of who's contributing. You can just look at this instantly. You can see those yellow institutions: University of Amsterdam, University College London, which are obviously doing a lot of contribution in this field. You'll see a strong set of contributors in the US, which is where a lot of this psychology research happens. Well, you'll see instantly that China, a little small ball there compared to the US and the GB UK1, and shows that a lot of psychology research is not coming out of China. They're a small contender in this particular field. If we switch to something like developmental biology, you'd see that change around quite a lot, and you see a big sphere for China. So you can apply these relatively easily. all based around that data we pull out of dimensions. And we have a lot of maps. This is just a snapshot of what we use at the moment, but we're big fans of visualizing data and thinking of new ways to visualize the data. So I hope that was somewhat informative about one of the use cases we have at Frontiers. We're very appreciative of the easy data access and the way that we can use that data. So just a shout out to my colleague, Matthew Richardson, who did all the hard work here. He's the one that puts together these maps for us. He's been working with Dimensions data for quite a while. So if there are questions, then I'm happy to answer those questions. Otherwise, back to you, Tyler.
Excellent. Thanks, Ian. That was really great. Love to see the use of VOS Viewer sort of integrated alongside some of your other visualizations there. That was really useful, especially outside of Dimensions. Obviously, there's an integration within Dimensions that's very useful, but outside is great. So thank you very much for those slides. That was fantastic. And thanks for trying to keep us on schedule a little bit. We are behind. So normally we would be taking a break now. What we'll do is we'll just take a couple of minutes to get the next session set up. Let everybody take a quick couple of minutes, but we won't take a full 15. So join us back here in just a couple of minutes. We'll probably take 5 to get everything ready for the next session. And then we'll go ahead and see if we can get some of our time back. So thanks, Ian, again. I really do appreciate that.